and welcome to this continuing first look exploring session, our second session looking at the Queen's Arcadia, or Arcadia Reformed by Samuel Daniel, the third of his plays that we have looked at in these exploring sessions. And with some caveats, we've been enjoying it so far. Get behind a small shrubbery and see how you find Act 3, because that's where we're going on from today. Reading the parts of Lincus, Techne, and Cloris today is...
Liza Graham, actor, singer, other stuff, London.
Excellent. Reading Melibaeus, Daphne, and Amarillis is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm in the void again.
And reading Alcon and Amyntas is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
And joining us for the Arcadian experience, reading Ergastus, Colax, and Dorinda is...
Lynsey Beauchamp, actor, Scotland. Is it caveats or just cats?
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and jumping in if I've got the doubling wrong. But hopefully we haven't. We've had 2 acts of Arcadia being interposed with outside forces. It's all terrible. The world isn't what it used to be. We're going to go now into Act 3, Scene 1. And we have the entrance of Alcon, who I don't think we've met before, and Lincus, who I also don't think we've met before. So, entirely new plot strand. Let's see where this goes.
What, my friend Lincus? Now in troth, well met.
Well met, good Alcon. This falls happily that we two thus encounter all alone, who had not any conference scarce this month.
In troth, I long to hear how you proceed in your new practice here among these swains. For you and I must grace each other's art. Though you knew me when I in Patras dwelt, and waited on a poor physician's man, and I knew you a pronotores boy that wrote indentures at the townhouse door. Yet are you here now a great man of law, and I a grave physician full of skill, and here we two are held the only men. But how thrive you in your new practice now?
Alcon, in troth, not anything to speak, for these poor people of Arcadia here are soon contented, each man with his own, as they desire no more, nor will be drawn to any contestation, nor indeed is there yet any frame composed whereby contention may proceed in practic form. For if they had this frame once to contend, then would they brawl and wrangle without end. For then they might be taught and counselled how to litigate perpetually, you know, and so might I be sure to do some good. But having here no matter whereupon to furnish real actions, as elsewhere, no tenures but a customary hold of what they have from their progenitors common without individuity, no purchasings, no contracts, no commerce, no politic commands, no services, no general assemblies, but to feast, and to delight themselves with fresh pastimes, how can I hope that I will ever thrive?
Is it possible that a society can with so little noise and sweat subsist?
It seems it may, before men have transformed their state of nature in so many shapes of their own managements and are cast out into confusion by their knowledges. Either I must pack me hence, or else must labour wholly to dissolve the frame and composition of their strange-built state, which now I seek to do, by drawing them to apprehend of these proprieties of mine and thine, and teach them to encroach and get them states apart and private shares. And this I have already set a work, if it will take, for I have met with 2 the aptest spirits the country yields, I know, Montanus and Acrisius, who are both old, both choleric, and both perverse, and both inclinable to avarice, and if their quarrel hold as 'tis begun, I do not doubt but all the rest will on, and if the worst should fall, if I could gain the reputation but to arbitrate and sway their strifes, I would get well by that.
'Tis marvel that their long and easy peace, that fosters plenty, and gives naught to do, should not with them beget contention too, as well as other where we see it doth.
This peace of theirs is not like others' peace, where craft lays traps to enrich himself with wiles, and men make prey of men and rise by spoils. This rather seems a quiet than a peace. For this poor corner of Arcadia here, this little angle of the world you see, which hath shut out of door all the earth beside, and is barred up with mountains and with rocks, hath had no intertrading with the rest of men, nor yet will have, but here alone, quite out of fortune's way, and underneath ambition or desire that weighs them not, they live as if still in the golden age, whereas the world was in his pupilage. But for mine own part, Alcon, I protest I envy them, that they thus make themselves an everlasting holy day of rest, whiles others work. And I do think it fit, being in the world, they should be of the world, and if that other states should do so too, as God forbid, what should we lawyers do? But I hope shortly yet we shall have here as many of us as our otherwhere, and we shall sweat and chase and talk as loud, brawl ourselves hoarse as well as they do at Patras, Sparta, Corinth, or at Thebes, and be as arrogant and even as proud, and then 'twill be a world, and not before. But how dost thou with thy profession frame?
No man can wish a better place than this to practice in my art. For here they will be sick for company, they are so kind. I have now 20 patients at this time that know not what they ail, no more do I, and they have physic all accordingly. First, Phyllis got running at barley break, a little cold, which I with certain drugs administered was thought to remedy. Doris saw that how Phyllis physic wrought, for Phyllis had told her she never took so delicate a thing in all her life, that more revived her heart and cleared her blood. Doris would needs be sick too and take some. Melina seeing that she would the like, and so she had the very same receipt. For to say troth, I have no more but that, and one poor pill I use for greater cures. But this is only sweet and delicate, fit for young women, and is like to be John, doth neither good nor hurt, but that's all one. For if they but conceive it doth, and it is that physicians hold the chief in all their cures, conceit and strong belief. Besides, I am a stranger come from far, for who now but the Arabian or the Jew in foreign lands are held the only men, although their knowledge be no more than mine.
'Tis true, friend Alcon, he that hath once got the elixir of opinion hath got all, and he is the man who turns his brass to gold.
Then can I talk of Galen, Erois, Hippocrates, Rhasis, and Abacon, and books I never read, and use strange speech of symptoms, crisis, and the critique days, eclagmets, embrox, lixios, cataplasmes, of Trices, opiates, opophylates, maze, with all the hideous terms art can devise to amuse weak and admiring innocence. Ignorance.
And that is right my trick. I overwhelm my practice too with darkness and strange words, with paragraphs, conditions, codicils, acceptilations, actions recissory, noxal and hypothetical, and involve domestic matter in a foreign phrase.
Then am I as abstruse and mystical in character and giving my receipt, observing the odd number in my pills in certain hours to gather and compound my simples, and make all to tend the moon. Then do I show the rare ingredients I use for some great cures, when need requires. The liver of a wolf, the lion's gall, the left side of a mole's, the fox's heart, the right foot of a tortoise, dragon's blood, and such strange savage stuff, as even the names are physic of themselves to move a man. And all the drugs I use must come from far, beyond the ocean and the sun at least, or else it hath no virtue physical. These homebred simples do no good at all.
No, it must be foreign stuff, God wot, or something else that is not to be got.
But now, in faith, I have found a trick that will perpetually so feed their rooms and entertain their idle weaknesses, as nothing in the world could do the like. For lately being at Corinth, 'twas my chance to encounter with a seaman, new arrived of Alexandria, who from India came, and brought a certain herb, wrapped up in rolls, from the island of Nicosia, where it grows, infused, I think, in some pestiferous juice, produced in that contagious burning clime, contrarious to our nature and our spirits, or else steeped in the fuming sap itself doth yield, to enforce the infecting power thereof. And this in powder made and fired, he sucks out of a little hollow instrument of calcinated clay, the smoke thereof, which either he conveys out of his nose, or down into his stomach with a whiff. And this, he said, a wondrous virtue had, to purge the head and cure the great catarrh, and to dry up all other meaner rheums, which when I saw, I straightway thought how well this new fantastical device would please the foolish people here grown humorous. And up I took all this commodity, and here have taught them how to use the same.
It is as easy to bring in the use of anything, though never so absurd, when nations are prepared to all abuse, and the humor of corruption once is stirred.
'Tis true. And now to see with what a strange and gluttonous desire they exhaust the same, how infinite and how insatiably they do devour the intoxicating fume, you would admire, as if their spirits thereby were taken and enchanted or transformed by some infused philter in the drug. For whereas heretofore they wanted were, at all their meetings and their festivals, to pass the time in telling witty tales, in questions, riddles, and in purposes, now do they nothing else but sit and suck and spit and slaver all the time they sit. But I go by and laugh unto myself, and think that this will one day make some work for me or others. But I fear it will be another age will find the hurt of this. But sure the times to come when they look back on this will wonder with themselves to think that men of sense could ever be so mad, to suck so gross a vapor that consumes their spirits, spends nature, dries up memory, corrupts the blood, and is a vanity.
But Alcon, peace! Here comes a patient! Peace!
Lincus, there doth indeed. Therefore away. Leave me alone, for I must now resume my surly, grave, and doctoral aspect. This wench I know, 'tis Daphne, who hath wronged her love, Menalcus, and played fast and loose with Colax, who revealed the whole to me.
And exit Lincus, and Alcon remains on stage. And wow, was ever there an exposition of how the introduction of tobacco was a con from the start? I think that's just brilliant. It's just, yeah. I've managed to persuade all these people that smoking this awful stuff is brilliant. And look, that men of sense could ever be so made to suck so gross a vapor that consumes their spirits, spends nature, dries up memory, corrupts the blood, and is a vanity.
Well, it does. It came from the New World, and therefore it falls into this play's theme of foreign, therefore evil. I This is as good a time as any to talk about remind our audience, many of whom already know this, that residue of cannabis had been found in certain pipes from the Elizabethan and Jacobean eras. So when they talk about tobacco, like sometimes they mean the happy tobacco.
But yeah, we've got. I just love it because this is Arcadia, and of course you've got two people from the real world. I think when they're talking about this world is talking about foreigners, it's just talking about worldly people from our universe coming in and with their ways. So we've got a lawyer and we've got a physician, and the physician basically he's doing really good trade because people sort of think that they should be ill because someone else was ill, and we'll have a pill too. And it's great, and it's a sugar. It's a placebo. It doesn't do anything. He's got nothing.
It might. I mean, it's the only remedy he knows, but it clearly does something. It's probably just like
coincidence.
A stimulant. Well, he talks about Herb John, which we think might be St. John's wort, possibly.
Well, he said it's like, but does neither good nor hurt. So.
Yeah, but it makes you feel good, man.
Yeah. Whereas the lawyer's having trouble getting people to hate each other enough.
Well, there's no private property, so nobody can sue each other over anything. And I could get all the shepherds to sue people who betrayed them in love. That could work.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rachel's had her hand up for ages.
Yes, sorry, we've been wittering away. Rachel, did you actually have something to contribute to this this ramble of randomness?
Yeah, I mean, just how terrible he is at his job. Just like the medical care he gives to women, totally sexist. I mean, he's giving out sugar pills, but also opiates. So I feel like it's a 50-50 of what you're getting. It's like, they're oh my God. It's,
No, I think he only talks about them. I don't know. I don't think he actually administers any of them. I think he always administers the same thing.
And neither of these people, neither of these people are good at their jobs because they're frauds. They're not real doctors or lawyers. They just acted as servants to them once, which is presumably the author's get-out clause for any actual doctors or lawyers in the audience who might take offense.
But they're also not bad portraits of actual lawyers and doctors, especially of the period. I'm sorry, that's not actually that far off a doctor of the period to a degree. I mean, this one probably does a lot less harm than the person who actually prescribes the stuff he lists, because they probably were killing people at quite a rate. Eric?
Yeah, I was just amused by all the verbs in Alcon's speech, sort of. Now they do nothing else but sick and suck and spit and slaver, and all the time they sit, and it's like, that's a lot of action. Just, I don't know. I like the sort of old mates hanging out, sort of comparing their achievements, accomplishments, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, it's just a lot of Alcon's speech is kind of a list of medical things. Yeah.
I do like Lincus's stuff. You got paragraphs, conditions, codicils, acceptulations. I like acceptulations. I think, that's enjoyable. Yeah. Domestic matter in a foreign phrase. I quite like in the Doctor's element, liver of a wolf, lion's gall, the left side of a mole's. His left or our left. Who knows? Seems a bit vague to me. But,
the mole's left.
Yeah.
What do you do with the right side of a mole?
Well, there's not much eating on it. Okay, I'm enjoying these characters. They're really fun. But that seems to be what always happens. Two people come on stage, they talk, we enjoy it, and then they walk off again. Or at least one of them walks off again. Alcon is left on, having reassumed his doctoral aspect. And it's Daphne, who have wronged her love. We've not met Daphne before, have we? Okay, let's find out what happens in Act 3, Scene 2 as Daphne enters to Alcon.
Good Dr. Alcon, I am come to crave your counsel to advise me for my health, for I suppose in troth I am not well. Methinks I should be sick, yet cannot tell. Something there is amiss that troubles me, for which I would take physic willingly.
Welcome, fair nymph. Come, let me try your pulse. I cannot blame you to hold yourself not well. Something amiss, quoth you? Here's all amiss. The whole fabric of yourself distempered is. The systole and diastole of your pulse do show your passions most hysterical. It seems you have not very careful been to observe the prophylactic regiment of your own body, so that we must now descend unto the therapeutical, that so we may prevent the syndrome of symptoms and may afterwards apply some analeptical elex pharmacum that may be proper for your milady. It seems, fair nymph, you dream much in the night.
Doctor, I do indeed.
I know you do. You are troubled much with thought.
I am indeed.
I know you are. You have great heaviness about your heart.
Now, truly, so I have.
I know you have. You wake oft in the night.
In truth, I do.
All this I know you do. And this, unless you by physic you prevent, think whereto it may bring you in the end. And therefore you must first evacuate all those colaxical hot humors which disturb your heart, and then refrigerate your blood by some Menalchean cordials, which you must take, and you shall straight find ease. And in the morning I will visit you.
I praise her. Let me take that of what you gave to Phyllis the other day, for she said it did comfort wonderfully and cheer her heart.
Fair nymph, you must, if you will use my art. Let me alone to give what I think good. I knew it fitted Phyllis, my lady, and so I think I know it will fit you.
And exit the doctor, Daphne left alone.
Oh, what a wondrous skillful man is this. Why, he knows all. Oh God, whoever thought any man living could have told so right a woman's grief in all points as he hath. Why, this is strange that by my very pulse, so he should know all I ail as well as I. Besides, I fear he sees too much in me, more than I would any man should see. Methought, although I could not well conceive his words, he spoke so learned and so strange. He said I had misruled my body much, as if he meant that I, in some wanton sort, I had abused my body with some man. How should he know that? What is my pulse become the intelligencer of my shame, or are my looks the index of my heart? So sure, so he said, and methought too, he named Menalcus or something very like, and likewise named that cunning, treacherous wretch that hath undone me, Colax, that vile devil, who indeed is the cause of all my grief, for which I now seek physic. But oh, what can physic do to cure that hideous wound my lusts have given my conscience, which I see is that which only is diseased within, and not my body now that it doth so disquiet all the lodging of my spirits as it keeps me waking, that it presents those only forms of terror that affright my broken sleeps, that lays upon my heart this heavy load that weighs it down with grief, and no disease beside, for which there is no cure, I see at all, nor no redress. Didst thou allege, vile man, to my weak youth, how that those vows I made unto my love were bands of custom, and could not lay on those manacles on nature, which should keep her freedom prisoner by our dome of breath? Oh, impious wretch, now nature gives the lie to thy foul heart, and tells my grieved soul I have done wrong to falsify that vow I first to my dear love Menalcus made. and says the assurance and the faith is given by a band on earth. The same is sealed in heaven. And therefore now, Menalcas, can these eyes that now abhor to look upon myself dare ever view the wronged face of thine? Who has relied on this false heart of mine?
And exit Daphne. I love this this doctor's appointment. This doctor's appointment is fab. I just love the way the doctor says, asks vague, generic questions. Do you dream? Yes, I do. I know you do. It's the "I know" is so good. I mean, it's so nicely done. And then he basically says, "Stop having the affair," and she just goes, "Could I just have the pills that you gave? You know, could you just prescribe?" This is why there's over prescribing in the medical service. It's this kind of patient who just comes in. Can I just have the tablets, please? Yeah, rather than just getting at the actual root cause of the malady. He's not a bad doctor, technically. He's actually, this is good advice. Mumbo jumbo, but yeah. And then Daphne's been very sad. Thoughts on the room? Lynsey.
This isn't a really great thought, but I did think there could be an awful lot of physical comedy in that scene between Daphne and Alcon, and I was imagining sort of first Alcon takes her hand and her pulse and is feeling her pulse and gradually sort of works his way up to here, and then he's got this line about you have great heaviness about your heart, and I was just thinking, is he kind of like feeling her chest to identify this heaviness of the heart and all that kind of. I just could see all of this physical comedy in the language, you know, if one were to go in that direction. So.
Well, I mean, there definitely was, because Daphne does say, did he know all this from my pulse and things like, and in the look in my eyes. So we've definitely got that. We've definitely got staring into the eyes stuff. So absolutely, I think you can go all the way with this, within, you know, consent between the performers. Other thoughts?
Well, if we were going that route, we could just basically have her taking off her clothes voluntarily. But no, I don't know. I do like the sort of doctor's appointment thing, but I think it's also worth looking into how Colax is now working to corrupt Arcadia, as we are told by report. That because all of the others are very specific. We've just had a doctor and a lawyer. Earlier we had Techne, who's applying craft to women's makeup and hair and dress. You know, they're not dressing in a nice natural way anymore. She's introducing fashion, which is evil. And she's also a bit of a pandress, as we'll see. But Colax doesn't have a specific brief like that. I think he's just there to corrupt people's fidelity and love. Like he was, Daphne says something like how that he alleged how that those vows I made unto my love were bands of custom and could not lay on those manacles of nature which should keep her freedom prisoner. And yeah, so Colax's corruption seems much more subtle, but perhaps more quick spreading than the other three that we've seen.
Well, yeah, because Colax is, you know, has gone out there with the express thing to split people up and to have his wicked way with people as well. Because he's had an affair with Daphne, hasn't he?
It seems he briefly has. Daphne, just take the good drugs, girl. You'll get over it.
Yeah. Whereas, yeah, so you know, there is this difference between Colax and Alcon at this stage. We're about to re-greet Colax. We haven't seen him for a while, actually. So and Techne, who we've seen more recently. So we're going to see where we are as we go into Act 3, Scene 3, and we have Colax and Techne. And just for Lynsey, who's new to this, Colax is a corrupted traveller, and Techne is a subtle wench of Corinth.
I see.
So we're saying to play that.
Is't possible, sweet Techne, what you say, that Cloris is so witty and so coy?
'Tis as I tell you, Colax, she's as coy, and hath as shrewd a spirit as quick conceit, as ever wench I broked in all my life.
Then there's some glory in attaining her. Here, now, I shall be sure to have something yet besides dull beauty. I shall lie with wit, for these fair creatures have such feeble spirits, and are so languishing as give no edge to appetite, and love but stuff's delight.
Well, if you get her, then you shall be sure to have your wish, and yet perhaps that store you find in her may check your longing more than all their wants whom you have tried before.
How? If I get her? What, do you suppose I shall not get her? That were very strange.
Yes, sir, she may be got, but yet I know she'll put you to the trial of your wit.
Let me alone. Could I find season fit to talk with her in private, she were mine.
That season may you now have very well, for, Colax, she hath promised faithfully this evening late to meet me at the cave of Erycina, underneath the hill, where I must fit her with a new attire wherewith she's far in love, and the other day thinking to try it at her father's house, whither I went with her to deal for you. The old Acrisius was himself at home, which did enforce us to defer our work until this evening, that we might, alone there, out of sight, more closely do the same. Where, while she stays, for I will make her stay for me a while, you at your pleasure may have the opportunity which you desire.
Oh, Techne, thou hast blessed me. If I now on this advantage conquer not her mind, let me be loathed of all womankind. And presently will I go suit myself as bravely as I can, go set my looks, arm my discourse, frame speeches passionate, and action both fit for so great a work. Techne, 1,000 thanks, and so adieu.
And exit Colax.
Well, Colax, she may yet deceive thy hopes, and I persuade myself she is as like as any subtle wench was ever born, to give as wise a man as you the scorn. But see where one whose faith hath better right unto her love than you comes here forlorn, like fortune's outcast, full of heaviness. Ah, poor Amyntas! Would thou knewest how much thou art esteemed, although not where thou wouldst, yet where thou should have love in that degree as never living man had like to thee. See how I, who sets for others' love, am took myself, and intricated here with one that hath his heart anotherwhere. But I will labor to divert the stream of his affections, and to turn his thoughts from that coy Cloris to the liberty of his own heart, with hope to make him mine.
And so Techne remains on stage as we go into Act 3, Scene 4. Enter Amyntas, who's probably been on stage for a while now, to Techne.
Now, fie, Amyntas, why should you thus grieve for a most foolish, wayward girl, that scorns your honest love and laughs at all you do? For shame, Amyntas, let her go as she is. You see her vain, and how perversely set. 'Tis fond to follow what we cannot get.
Oh, Techne, Techne, though I never get, yet will I ever follow whilst I breathe. And if I perish by the way, it shall my death be pleasing that for her I die. One day she may hap to come that way, and be it, oh her way, where I shall lie. And with her proud, disdainful foot she may tread on my tomb and say, lo, where he lies, the triumph and the conquest of mine eyes. And though I lose myself and lose my tears, it shall be glory yet that I was hers. What have I done of late should make her thus my presence with that strange disdain to fly? as if she did abhor my company. Cloris, God knows, thou hast no cause therefore, unless it be for loving more and more. Why, thou wert wont to lend me yet an ear, and though thou wouldst not help, yet wouldst thou hear.
Perhaps she thinks thy heat will be allayed, the fire being gone, and therefore doth she well not to be seen there where she will not aid.
Alas, she knows no hand but hers can quench that heat in me, and therefore doth she wrong to fire my heart, and then to run away. And if she would not aid, yet might she ease my careful soul, if she would but stand by, and only look upon me while I die.
Well, Amyntas, little dost thou know with whom that cunning wanton sorts herself. Whilst thou thus mourn'st, and with what secret wiles she works to meet her lover in the woods, with whom in groves and caves she dallying sits, and mocks thy passions and thy doleful fits.
No, Techne, no, I know that cannot be true. I know that cannot be, and therefore do not wrong her modesty. For Cloris loves no man, and that's some ease unto my grief, and gives a hope that yet, if ever soft affection touch her heart, she will look back and think on my desert.
If that be all, that hope is at an end. For if thou wilt this evening but attend, and walk down under Erycina's grove, and place thyself in some close secret bush, right opposite unto the hollow cave that looks unto the valley, thou shalt see that honesty and that great modesty.
If I see Cloris there, I know I shall see nothing else with her but modesty.
Yes, something else will grieve your heart to see, but you must be content, and think yourself are not the first that thus have been deceived with fair appearing outsides, and mistook a wanton heart by a chaste seeming look. But I conjure you, by the love you bear unto those eyes which make you as you are, the example of compassion to the world, sit close, and be not seen in any case.
Well, Techne, if I shall see Cloris there, it is enough. Then thither will I go, who will go anywhere to look on her. And Cloris, know, I do not go to see anything else of thee, but only thee.
Well, go, and think yet of her honest care who gives the note of such a shameful deed. And judge, Amyntas, when thou shalt be free, who more deserves thy love, or I, or she?
And they exit. So, yes, we have someone, for once in all of the workings on the Arcadians, someone's not just taking the outsider's word as gospel. You get the impression a lot of people said, well, they were doing something naughty over there, and well, I don't think they would do that. And whereas, yeah, demanding proof. I don't believe you. And so, good on Amyntas there, not just blindly believing something because some other random person has told you something. Thoughts in the room? Liza.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love how evil Techne is, but I also love that she has this blind spot or weak spot of being so crazy in love with Mr. Teen Goth here. Because not to judge a man by one scene. Amyntas seemed pretty happy in the first scene we met in. But now he's gone full emo, man. He's sitting there in the grove with his headphones on, listening to Bauhaus. It's
well, there's a lot of teenagers in this play, so I think that's reasonable. That's perfectly legitimate. That's fine. Other thoughts? Okay, well then let's find out where the two hiding in the bushes think the state of Arcadia lands as we go to Act 3, Scene 5. Melibaeus and Ergastus.
Now what infernal projects are here laid to affect an honest heart, to expose a maid unto the danger of a lone assault, to make her to offend without her fault?
And see what other new appearing spirits would raise the tempests of disturbances upon our rest, and labour to bring in all the whole ocean of unquietness, to overwhelm the poor peace we live in. How one would fain instruct and teach us how to cut our throats with form, and to contend with artificial knowledge, to undo each other, and to brabble without end, as if that nature had not took more care for us than we for our own selves can take, and makes us better laws than those we make. And as if all that science aught could give unto our bliss, but only shows us how the better to contend, but not to live. And evermore we see how vice doth grow with knowledge, and brings forth a more increase, when skilful men begin, how good men cease. And therefore how much better do we live with quiet ignorance than we should do with turbulent and ever-working skill, which makes us not to live, but labour still.
And see that other vain fantastic spirit, who would corrupt our bodies too likewise, as this our minds, and make our health to be as troublesome as sickness to devise, that no part of us ever should be free, both forging on our credulity that takes the advantage of our weaknesses, both clothe their frivolous uncertainties in strange attires to make it seem less.
And they exit. So once again, they do nothing. They listen. Liza.
I think I'm starting to realize why they do nothing, or at least to have a theory as to why they do nothing. And that theory came from the scene at the end of Act 2, as well as this scene, where I noticed that although most people are speaking in blank verse with the occasional couplet, these guys have much more complicated verse forms. And after all of the neoclassical tragedy we've done, that's something I associate with a chorus. And I'm thinking that maybe they have to witness everything because they're a chorus, and they have to deliver a moral lesson, but because they're a chorus, but a chorus also can't do anything about it because they're not actors, just commentators. Something like that? Who knows?
Yeah, no, we noted that they are structured like a chorus, but they also is the question of how much agency they're given within the rest of the thing. I am only possibly being a bit silly when we complain about them not doing anything, hiding behind a shrubbery. Lynsey.
Yeah, I was just thinking staging-wise, would it work if they were like those two critics in the Muppet movies, who are up in the balcony, sort of talking? Might be fun.
They're not far off. I mean, they're basically aged Arcadians sitting there. I mean, they open the play by basically going, "Oh, things aren't what they used to be." That's basically what they said. There's all this new stuff coming out, coming in. I don't understand it. Any other thoughts? That was Act 3 completed. Okay, let's go into the incredible world of Act 4. Now, I don't want anyone to get too excited, but we might have a scene with 3 people in it coming up. Not yet. But you might see 3 people on stage at the same time at some point this evening. Maybe. Anyway, Act 4, Scene 1, enter Techne and Amyntas. So the chorus pretty much functioning as a bridge to let them walk off and then walk back on again.
Amyntas must come back, I know this way, and here it will be best for me to stay. And here indeed he comes. Poor man, I see all quite dismayed. And now I'll work on him. Come, who tells truth, Amyntas? Who deceives your expectations now, Cloris or I?
Peace, Techne, peace. And do not interrupt the grief that hath no leisure to attend aught but itself, and hath shut up with it all other sense and private close within, from doing anything but only think.
Think? Whereon should you think? You have thought enough, and too much on such a one as she, whom now I see you have tried her, whom now you see you have tried her honesty, and let her go, proud girl, accordingly. There's none of these young wanton things that know how to use a man, or how to make their choice, or answer men's affections as they ought. And if you'll think she's not worth a thought.
Good Techne, leave me, for thy speech and sight bear both the disproportion to my grief, as that they trouble, and confound confusion in my sorrows, which doth loathe that sound of words that answers not the tone of my disprayers in the accents of like moan. And now hath sorrow no more worse plague I see than free and unpartaking company, who are not for the fashion of our woes, and whose affection do not look likewise of that completion as our miseries. And therefore pray thee leave me, or else leave to speak, or if thou speak, let it not be to me, or else let me not answer thee.
Well, I say nothing. You know what you've seen.
'Tis true, I do confess that I have seen the worst the world can show me, and the worst that can be ever seen with mortal eye. I have beheld the whole of all wherein my heart had any interest in this life, to be disrent and torn from of my hopes, that nothing now is least, why I should live, that oh stage I had given the world, that stage I had given the world, which was the hope of her, that held me to hold truce with it, and with this life is gone, and now, well, may I break with them, and break I will, and rend that pact of nature, and dissolve that league of blood that ties me to myself. For Cloris, now hath thy immodesty enfranchised me, and made me free to die, which otherwise I could not left it might have been some stain and some disgrace to thee. As, was it not enough for this poor heart to endure the burden of her proud disdain, that weighed it to the earth, but it must be crushed thus with the oppression of her stain? The first wound, yet though it were huge and wide, yet was it cleanly made. It festered not, but this now given comes by a poisoned shot, against all laws of honor that are pure, and rankles deadly, is without all cure. Ah, how she blushed when as she issued forth with her enamored mate out of the cave. And well then might she blush at such a deed, and with how wild a look fly casts about her fearful eyes, as if her loathsome sin now coming thus into the open sight, with terror did her guiltless affright. And up she treads the hill with such a pace, as if she gladly would have gone shame, which yet for all her hasting after came. And at their coming forth, methought I heard the villain use her name, and she returned the same again in very earnest sort, which could be for no good, I know to me, but only that perhaps it pleased her then to cast me up by this way of her mouth from off her heart, lest it might stuff the same. But Cloris, know thou shalt not need to fear. I never more shall interrupt thy joys with my complaints, nor more observe thy ways. And oh, I would thy heart could be as free from sin and shame as thou shalt be from me. I could, and I have reason so to do, revenge my wrong upon that wicked wretch, who hath surprised my love and robbed thy shame, and make his blood the oblation of my wrath, even at thy feet, that thou mightst see the same to expiate for this injustice done. But that the fact examined would display thy infamy abroad unto the world, which I had rather die than once bewray. And Techne, pray thee, tell her thus from me, but yet tell it softly in her ear, and be thou sure no living creature here that her modesty hath lost this day. To the most honest guardians of her good she had in life, her honor and my blood.
Now I may speak, I trust. You speak to me.
No, not yet, Techne. Pray thee stay a while. And tell her too, though she spares not her shame, my death shall show that I respect her fame.
Then now I may.
Oh, Techne, not yet! Did her not forget Amyntas' fate, though she despised him, and one day yet she may be touched with grief, and that ere long. To think on her dishonor and his wrong. Now, Techne, I have done, and so farewell.
But stay, Amyntas, now must I begin.
I cannot stay, Techne. Let go your hold. It is in vain, I say, I must be gone.
Exit, Amyntas.
Now, dear Amyntas, hear me but one word. He is gone, and in that fury gone, as sure he will, in this extremity of his despair, do violence to himself. And therefore now what help shall I devise to stay his ruin? Sure there is no means but to call Cloris, and persuade with her to follow him and to prevent his death. For though this practice was for mine own good, yet my deceits used not to stretch to blood. But now I know not where I should find out that cruel maid, but I must cast about.
And exits, yeah. You do naughty things. You don't lead to death. You don't do death things, you know.
Yeah, I do sin. I do corruption and makeup and cosmetics. But death is kind of beyond my department.
Yeah, outside your remit. Yeah, and I love that thing of is any more you need to say? Okay, lovely. Now let me. No, I want to tell you something.
Okay, now can I talk? No.
Yeah. Thoughts in the room, Eric?
I did like that because it's basically like, I'm doing a monologue here. Do you mind? Sort of just kind of. And like, I'm gonna go kill myself now. Do you mind? Just kind of, which is not something to be made light of, but just the way it's done is quite masterful.
And of course, describing what's been seen. Of course, there may be other interpretations to these events. Rachael.
I was gonna say to that monologue bit. It sounds like even though Techne is there, he could be just giving it to the audience. And like just telling her like, shut up, like this is an aside or something like that, or maybe I don't know. It seems like even if he's talking to her, he doesn't really care much more than just to vent to her. Like who was I yesterday? Palamon, who was just venting at somebody. A lot of talking. There's a lot of there's some conversations here between like in these two Hender scenes, but there's also a lot of these scenes where it's just somebody talking at somebody and the other person realizes it and they're like, okay.
Yeah. I'm the feed. Is that literally my job? Okay. Let me deliver the prompt, your cues, so that you can do your next speech. Liza.
Well, actually, I think I saw Eric's hand first, and I've talked a lot.
Eric.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I was just going to say that now, like, yesterday we were talking about how there were no stakes in this sort of, in these two-handers, but now, like, there are, because Techne has basically sent off this guy to kill himself to a degree. I don't know, maybe he might not do it. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I still feel everyone's a bit posy. They're sort of posing. I don't know if he'd go through with it yet. Arcadia, the Dulcian tradition of Arcadia is strong here. I don't feel that anyone's quite actually got the enough of the real world has bled into this universe yet. But I could be wrong. That could just be me. That's just an opinion. Lynsey.
I feel it's nearly time for a piece of sheep's wool covered in blood to be mistaken for a handkerchief belonging to someone who... Is that the sort of territory we're in here, maybe?
Well, it's certainly in the sense of misunderstanding what's going on, in the sense of what Amyntas has seen is not necessarily what he thinks he's seen. We know that Techne and had organised a dressing up competition at the cave. So there's not competition, but dressing up session. So we were told that earlier. So we know why she was there, unless the what's his name was there as well, pulling his trousers up. Well, I don't recall that detail. Just that she looked mightily suspicious. Mm-hmm. That was basically it, and that's because she was playing dress up when she shouldn't have been.
In a cave.
In a cave, because her dad wasn't keen on it at home. So out of such tiny things. Other thoughts, Liza?
Yeah, I mean, structurally, as an opera person, this structure is familiar to me because I think what Amyntas essentially wants is to sing an aria. And a speech was as much a set piece as an aria, I suppose, if you had that kind of actor in your boy's company. What they wanted to hear the boy actor do was give an impassioned speech. And I do like, the way that it plays to the stereotype of the melancholy lover, saying, that grief that hath no leisure to attend aught but itself, and hath shut up with it all other sense in private close within, from doing anything but only think. And that's very much the poetic melancholy lover type. I also, having scrolled back through the scene, I see that each of Amyntas's first lines is telling Techne either to sod off or shut up, which, at least he holds firmly to that position.
Consistency. Okay, we're going to go to Act 4, Scene 2. And Amarillis and Dorinda. Now, did we meet any of these people before? We've heard about them. We've heard about Dorinda.
They've been mentioned, but they haven't been. They haven't appeared.
So another set of random people doing a two-hander. Anyway, Act 4. I do promise you a scene with more than two people. It's coming. It's coming. I know. Hold on to your hats. But first, Act 4, Scene 2. Amarillis and Dorinda.
Dorinda, you are yet in happy case. You are beloved. You need not to complain. I have reason only to bewail my fortunes, who am cast upon disdain, and on his rocky heart that racks my youth with storms of sorrows and contempts my truth. 'Tis I that am shut out from all delight this world can yield a maid, that am removed from the only joy of earth to be beloved. Cruel Carina scorns this faith of mine, and lets poor Amarillis grieve and pine.
'Tis true, indeed, you say, I am beloved, sweet Amarillis, and perhaps much more than I would be. Plenty doth make me poor. For now my heart, as if divided, stands betwixt two passions, love and pity both, that draw it either way, with that main force as that I know not which to yield unto. And then fear in the midst holds me in suspense, lest I lose both by mine improvidence.
How many that be, Dorinda? You know this, you can enjoy but one. In one there is ought to possess your heart, and love alone. Who hunts two hares at one time captures none.
I must tell you, dear friend, the whole discourse, from whom I cannot anything conceal. Arcadia knows, and every shepherd knows, how much Myrtilus hath deserved of me, and how long time his woeful suit hath lain, depending on the mercy of mine eyes. For whom I do confess pity hath been the attorney evermore, that stands and pleads before my heart the justice of his cause, and says he ought have love by love's own laws. But now the master sovereign, lord of hearts, that great commander, and that tyrant love, who must have all according to his will, whom pity only ushers, goes before, as lightning doth the thunder, he says no, and will that Colax only have my heart, that gallant herdsman full of skill and art, and all experience of love's mysteries, to whom I must confess me to have given the earnest of my love. But since that time I never saw the man, which makes me much to wonder that his dealing should be such. For either love hath, in respect that I despised have the true and honest faith of one that loved me with sincerity, made me spoil of falsehood and contempt, or else perhaps the same is done to try my resolution and my constancy. But yet I fear the worst, and fear I may, lest he, now having got the victory, cares for no more, and seeing he knows my love turns towards him, he turns his back to me, so that I know not what were best resolve, either to stand unto the doubtful faith of one that hath so dangerously begun, or else return to accept Melibaeus' love, who will perhaps, when mine begins, have done. So that enwrapped in this distracted toil, I vex and know not what to do the while. And therefore, Amarillis, I think sure, seeing now how others' love in me hath proved, you are most happy not to be beloved.
And we go straight into the next scene as they are joined by Cloris as we go into Act 4, Scene 3. Cloris, Amarillis, and Dorinda, yes, 3 people on stage at the same time. Enter Cloris.
Now, here between you two kind, loving souls, I know there can be no talk but of love. Love must be all the scope of your discourse. Alas, poor hearts, I wonder how you can in this deceitful world think of a man, for they do nothing but make fools of you, and laugh when they have done, and prove untrue.
Well, Cloris, rejoice that you are free. You may be touched one day as well as we.
Indeed, and I had like to this last night, had I not looked with such an angry eye and frowned so sour that I made love afeard. There was a fellow, needs forsooth, would have my heart from me whether I would or not, and had as great advantage one could have, I tell you, that he had me in a cave.
What? In a cave? Cloris, how came you there?
And truly, Dorinda, I will tell you how. By no art magic, but a plain device of Techne, who would try her wit on me, for she had promised me to meet me there at such an hour, and thither bring with her a new strange dressing she had made for me, which there close out of sight I should try on. Thither went I, poor fool, at the hour decreed, and there expecting Techne's company, in rushes fleering Colax after me, sure she sent of purpose to the place, and there with his affected apish grace and strained speech, offering to seize on me, out rushed I from him, as indeed amazed at his so sudden and unexpected sight, and after follows he, vows, swears, protests by all the gods, he never loved before anyone living in the world but me, and for me only he would spend his life.
Alas, and what am I forgotten then? Why, these were even the words he spake to me.
And then inveighs against Amyntas' love, vaunts his own parts, and in his great knowledges, and all so idle as in troth methought I never heard a man more vainly talk, for so much as I heard, for Up the hill I went with such a pace, and never stayed to give regard to anything he said, and at the last I scarce had left him breath sufficient to forswear himself withal.
Oh, what hath then my silly ignorance done, to be deceived and mocked by such a one?
And when I had recovered up the hill, I fairly ran away and left my man in midst of his conjuring perjuries, all empty to return, with mighty loss of breath and labour, having cast away much foolish pains in tricking up himself for this exploit, and goes without his gain, which he in hope devoured before he came. I too missed my dressing by this means. But I admire how any woman can be so unwise to like of such a man. For I protest I see none else but froth and shallow impudence, affected grace, and some few idle practised compliments, and all the thing he is without he is. For affection strives but to appear, and never is of substance or sincere. And yet this dare of falsehood hath beguiled 1,000 foolish wenches in his days.
The more wretch he, and more hard hap was theirs.
Why do you sigh, Dorinda? Are you touched with any of these passages of mine?
No, truly, not of yours, but I have cause in my particular that makes me sigh.
Well, come one to put us from this talk. Let us devise some sport to pass the time.
Faith, I have no great list to any sport.
Nor I, in troth, 'tis farthest from my mind.
Then let us tell old tales, repeat our dreams, or anything rather than think of love.
And now you speak of dreams. In truth, last night I was much troubled with a fearful dream.
And truly, Amarillis, so was I.
And
But
now
before we
I
get
do.
to people sharing their dreams, because that's always a nightmare, isn't it? Let me tell you my dream. I had a dream the other night. It was, no, please don't. Because this is doing very different business to earlier. So we get the full story of the cave, and it's much more threat of violence in there from Colax. Dorinda there, those little bits between Cloris's speech are clearly asides. It's Cloris isn't hearing what's being said there by Dorinda.
No, not till her last interjection.
When there's a sigh.
Well, the last one, Dorinda is concealing her own involvement, just saying the more wretch he and more hard hap was theirs.
Yeah, nothing to do with me. Sigh. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, what do we talk about now? What do we do now? What are we going to do now? I don't know. Tell a story. I don't know any stories. I had a dream. So it's a slightly darker passage than we've had before. And Dorinda, of course, we go into this with her experience of Colax. Ernest, to whom I must confess me to have given the earnest of my love, but since that time I never saw the man. That's a story that has never been heard before or since of a certain type of behaviour from a man. Then thoughts from the room, not by me. Somebody else's thoughts, different thoughts, exciting thoughts. Liza, then Eric.
Just that it's no, wait, I need to get my thoughts in order. Let us have Eric's thoughts, please.
Eric, expound.
I expand. Okay. I was just gonna say that it's interesting how we still have the whole competing for like who has the worst life/love life. Sort of, oh, you know what happened to me yesterday, and this happened, and so on. But it still feels kind of human in the like they kind of, if you have a bad day or something, and you go to see a friend of yours, you kind of go, oh, you know what terrible thing happened to me. And then, but obviously you kind of don't compete with your friend for that. It just, I don't know, it just feels weird.
Yeah, well, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's what people do. They immediately share their own terrible experience in kinship or in competition. There are some people who just can't help but turn it into a competition, and there's a lot of that in Arcadia, because what can you do? Because they clearly don't have television or anything. Liza, have you gathered your thoughts?
A few of them, yes. They're straying like lost sheep, really. Yes, just as Eric demonstrates. That's exactly where the sheep go. They're sort of floating sheep. Anyway, yes, they don't have TV. They just hide in the shrubbery and watch each other, I think. And the thing that makes me saddest, apart from that Cloris should have had to undergo this traumatic incident, and thankfully she extricated herself and ran away. Sensible girl, ran up the hill like any shepherdess could, which, you go, Cloris, but she also seems very miffed that she didn't even get the cool outfit that she was promised. And if Techne wants to redeem herself, she better come through with that outfit, is all I'm saying.
Absolutely, yeah. It did seem quite bitter about that. Yeah. Where were the clothes? Where are the cool clothes? Doesn't quite seem to have put two and two together yet, has she? Anyway, we've got a little bit more text left to do. Cloris, I believe you have a dream.
And now I do remember too, I had a foolish idle dream, and thus it was. Methought the fairest of Montanus' lambs, and one he loved the best of all his flock, was singled out, chased by cruel cur, and in his hot pursuit it makes towards me. Methought for succour, and about me ran, as if it begged my aid to have his life, which I long time deferred, and still looked on, and would not rescue it. Until at length I saw it, even quite worried, out of breath, and panting at my feet, and could no more. And then methought I took it up from death, and cherished it with me, and brought it back home to Montanus, who was glad to see the poor recovered creature thus restored. And I myself was greatly pleased, methought, that by my hands so good a deed was wrought. And Amarillis, now tell us your dream.
Methought as I in Amyntas walked, a fearful wolf rushed forth from out a brake, and towards me makes with open hideous jaws, from whom I ran with all the speed I could, to escape my danger and overtake the one whom I saw before, that might lend aid to me distressed. But he, methought, did run as fast from me as I did from the beast. I cried to him, but all in vain to stay. The more I cried, the more he ran away, and after me the wolf, so long as I began to faint in mind, seeing my despair before, my death behind. Yet ran I still, and lo, methought at length a little he began to slack his pace, which I perceiving put to all my strength, and ran as if desire had winged my heels, and in the end methought recovered him. But never woman felt more joy, it seemed, to overtake a man than I did him, by whom I escaped the danger I was in. That when I waked, as presently I waked, I touched with that sudden joy which my poor heart, God knows, had not been used unto of late. I found myself all in a moist, faint sweat, with that affrighting heart did beget. And though I were delivered of my fear, and felt this joy, yet did the trembling last upon my heart, when now the fear was past.
God, yet this Amarillis may your good portend, that yet you shall have comfort in the end.
God grant I may, it is the thing I want.
And now, Dorinda, tell us what you dreamt.
I dreamt that, having gone to gather flowers and weary of my work, reposing me upon a bank near to a river's side, a subtle serpent lurking in the grass came secretly and seized on my breast, which though I saw, I had no power to stir, but lay me still till he had ate away into my bosom, whence he took my heart, and in his mouth carrying the same away, returns me, though again from whence he came, which I perceiving presently arose, and after it most woefully I went to see if I could find my heart again, and up and down I sought, but all in vain.
In troth, 'tis no good luck to dream of snakes. One shall be sure to hear anger after it.
And so it may be I have done today.
Indeed, and I have heard it never fails.
And
Now
at
it-
which point, just to shock everyone, as we go into Act 4, Scene 4, a fourth person is on stage. And sadly, that's where we're kind of break the session, because that's just a culture shock that I don't think we can cope with, and it's just a bit too much. It's a bit much. So yeah, we have a bit of dream time. All of those dreams seem interestingly significant to the world we've been in. Anyone want to talk about their dreams? Rachael.
It reminds me a bit of Callisto and Melibaeus, where she has that extended I don't know, dream sequence, telling her dream to her father, telling him all this stuff. Yeah.
And I think there's something similar in Lily as well. That might be more prophecy than dream, but there's that kind of thing. Yeah, I think dreams abound. Other thoughts about dreams? Liza.
Well, I quite like that Cloris, having rushed on stage into the middle of Amarillis and Daphne's scene and said, you guys, you'll never guess what happened to me, and giving an extended monologue about what just happened to me. And then she's like, well, let's devise some sport. Let's tell each other our dreams. Oh my God, I had this dream. She doesn't even let them go first. She just keeps going. And we've had various animal metaphors in this play before, and we've now have a dream about a lamb, a dream about a wolf, and a dream about a serpent. All very much Arcadian animals, even the serpent, who's sort of, in any Eden there has to be a serpent.
Yeah, who came secretly and seized on my breast. Did we have frozen snakes the other day, or was that a different play? It was this play, wasn't it? Yeah. So we've had repeated imagery throughout the play. It's not just this imagery just turning up now. Eric.
Pretty sure the snake on the breast, or at least this, snakes being, aggressive, was also in one of the dumb shows for Tancred and Gizmunda, where when Megara makes an appearance.
Tosses a snake across to make Tancred mad.
Yeah,
Madness snake.
Kind of like,
Madness
okay.
snake. Rachael, have you got half a thought? You're sort of waving tentatively.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say our scene, our first scene with more than two people, it's women. So I feel there is that air of a gossip session,
Excuse me.
Yes, Liza.
There is, and there might be also a spatial thing. So often you find when you're doing exercises that, acting sort of exercises that, in a classical sense anyway, that two women can stand closer to each other than two male heroes can, or a hero and a villain. They always have to be sort of a little further apart than women, than female gendered characters are, and or at least young women. Young women can form little groups. I'm not sure whether there's in-period antecedent for this, but it tends to be something that you find.
Because, of course, the fourth person who's about to join the scene is Techne. So, I'm sure tomorrow when we start our session, we'll be in full flow about that, about the clothing that she was supposed to bring to the cave, and what went horribly wrong there, and do I get a discount for next time? But that's for next time, for next session, when this cast size just keeps getting bigger. Actually, we do go back to a few two-handers, but then we're back to a three, and then it just goes mental. There's about half a dozen plus people. In fact, the doubling falls apart. We just don't have enough people in the room to do it. It just doesn't work. So, getting much more of a sense of the play overall now. Talking about the what we do with this, we had some caveats about the never-ending two-handers, that it gets a bit static after a while. I'm also wondering about the number of new characters we're getting who are doing similar things to characters we met earlier. I'm wondering if some of those minor characters could be elided. So could Dorinda be, because we've had a couple of people having an affair with Colax. Could we just whittle that down to one, and everyone else is off stage, rather than have several different characters? I don't know if that's practical or not. It may all fall apart in the final session. But I'm just wondering about that, whether there's some additional interventions that could be done. But yeah, final thoughts about the play overall. Liza, what do you think of the show so far?
Well, in this session, the plot thickens. It definitely, the soup is coming to the boil, as they say. And we are starting to see Colax and Techne's evil plans. We've had another couple of characters introduced who want to drop some fairly foul ingredients into this nice soup that we were all going to have. Yeah, I'm intrigued now to see whether virtue and love will prevail, and evil and skullduggery will get their comeuppance as they ought.
Yeah, I want to know if we're going to see the Doctor and the Lawyer again, because I loved that episode. I thought that was great, and it's one of those bits which are really detachable. I'm going, okay, I can put that in a separate show. That's lovely.
Well, to be fair, if the lawyer takes everyone's statements, I think they do all have grounds to sue Colax for emotional damage and or breach of promise. Promise of breaches. Who knows?
I think we could add that in, even if, I like that. He just turns up at the end to do a class action suit. Eric, any final thoughts?
I don't know. It's kind of like I feel like we've shifted a bit, like in terms of the focus of the story, but I don't really know if there was a story in the beginning. I was trying to explain this play to a friend of mine, and I was like, well, there's two people who are stirring shit for other people, and that's about it. I was struggling to sort of like figure out how to, narrate the story of this. And I think like yesterday when you mentioned it could be a good audio adaptation, I think Valentino also mentioned youth showcase kind of thing, youth drama showcase. That could definitely work, because there are parts that are big, but they're not that big compared to like Antony and Cleopatra things. So yeah, I mean, they sort of the tragedy of Antony or the tragedy of Cleopatra, and I don't know. It's weird having Samuel Daniel do comedy. It just feels off. The language is great, but the I don't know. Maybe it's just not getting into the mood kind of thing.
Yeah, I think in a sense we're making the mistake of looking for a central narrative, because there is a sort of central narrative. The narrative is Arcadia's been invaded, and bad shit's going down, and in a sense it's all of Arcadia's being pulled apart, and there isn't a central focus on that. There almost is a central focus. It's Colax trying to get Cloris. That's as close to the central focus as we get. But there isn't actually enough sustained action of the two of them together, or for that to feel like that is the center of it all. So yeah, it's more like there's a world. Arcadia is the character that we need to worry about. What's happening to Arcadia, and see where we go. Rachael, any final thoughts?
Yeah, that one scene with the two academics or fake academics reminded me a lot of the Parnassus plays. That sort of there was something reminiscent of that. Yeah, I Samuel Daniel just writes so pretty. Even in something.
That's the tagline for the episode. Samuel Daniel just writes so pretty.
Rachael is not wrong.
No, it's a great statement.
If he's a sonnet, I might send him one back.
Yeah. I don't know if there's so much plot. I think the plot is kind of like Gamma-Gurton's Needle. It's like it's not complex enough, and it's not like it's trying to do that because it's supposed to be the jokes. It's just like I feel like these scenes are just setups to jokes, or maybe a little further. There's like more plot than Gamma-Gurton's Needle, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just vice and joke. Yeah.
And a lot of angst. I think we've got it's teenage angst all the way, all the way through. Is the core of this. It's actually surprisingly unstudenty a lot of the time. I mean, the closest we've got to that sort of Parnassus feel is the Alcon and Lincus stuff. But that also goes all the way back to John Hayward, for goodness sake, and earlier, and Chaucer to a degree. I mean, all of the gags about the medical stuff is positively medieval.
It is, and I am getting a bit of a Troilus and Cressida vibe by Chaucer.
Yeah. You got the pronunciation made me appreciate that point. Yes.
From Colax, who seems to be Colax and Techne seem to be pandering. Techne, I think, is explicitly a panderess.
And other Chaucer stuff, with Palamon, of course, as well. So it does feel like it's pulling threads left, right, and centre. Lynsey, you've come in halfway through, so you've no idea what's going on. Even if you knew what was going on, you wouldn't know what was going on. Thoughts?
Well, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really enjoying the characters, and I'm enjoying the language, and I find myself visualizing it as a sort of in terms of staging, like the sort of golden compendium. It's like all these shepherdesses actually have the most incredible costumes, and it just all sort of like a big children's storybook somehow, with the characters just stepping out of the book and into life, something like that. I think it's quite lovely, really. He does write pretty.
Yeah. I like the idea. Yeah, I really like that. If everyone in Arcadia has these gorgeous costumes and everything's beautiful and everything's lovely, but when the people from outside come in, it's like darkness and decay. They come in and their costumes are just not nice. They might be fabulous, but they'll be wrong in some way, and they'll be the wrong note.
And everyone has to start chain smoking after the doctor's speech about teaching them all to smoke tobacco.
I just love that whole tobacco thing. That bit, again, is just so pull-outable, because it really does speak to the thing of, basically, smoking's awful. It takes a long time to actually get addicted to cigarettes. You have to work really hard for that addiction to take on in most cases. Some people are unlucky. But, most of it's social pressure and peer pressure that make it. And it's starting here. And it's diagnosed here. and it's only taken 400 odd years to make any kind of inroads into getting rid of it. But they knew from the off it was bollocks. Sorry, Eric, you were waving.
I was just going to say that there's a really great Gad Elmaleh sketch about trying to start smoking rather than trying to quit smoking. And it's basically using all the techniques for quitting smoking, but like to start smoking. So like, putting on nicotine patches and like starting to get nervous at the cinema because the film is too long or, that kind of thing. It's actually quite a good sketch.
Right. Well, that's it for this session. We have one more session on the Queen's Arcadia to come. But otherwise, all that remains is to thank all these wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. That men of sense could ever be so mad to suck so gross a vapour.